Welcome back to the Ease Anxiety podcast. Now, a lot of people are going to find their way to this podcast after they've tried many things. They've done therapy, they've tried medication, they've downloaded all the crazy apps that are out there, and they still feel stuck with anxiety. And that's not for lack of trying, right? But it's because what they're doing is just managing. And managing and healing anxiety are not the same thing. So today you're going to hear from someone who has experienced this difference and was brave enough to come on the podcast to share his experiences. He's been from not being able to cross a bridge to driving normally and is now even tapering off his benzodiazepines. He is a real inspiration. And what shifted for him was not just willpower, it was understanding. So let me introduce you to Robert. And Robert, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast with me today.
Well, thanks for having me. I was excited to get on and talk to you about my adventure.
Yeah, you have been such an inspiration. But now, most people that are listening don't know you. So can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Before we started working together, what was life like for you then?
So I am a father of five and a grandfather to seven. I live in a small suburb of Oklahoma City. I'm an IT manager and deal with thousands of devices and 25,000 students on a daily basis. I have suffered with anxiety I counted up recently, like the last 19 years. I don't know exactly what happened, but I started off small, I call them small panic attacks that caused me to second guess every time I got on the highway or every time I got on the road. And it progressed and progressed and got to the point where I couldn't make short drives within town. I was just uptight all the time. And eventually got to the point that I started feeling anxious in meetings and in closed groups. Some of that may have actually started after COVID. It does wear on you. You know, it's a tough existence to be in. As far as family life goes, I had a hard time going on vacations. We haven't been on a long vacation in a long, long time. Usually they're just short trips, and my wife does all the driving. So it's been a real challenge for quite a few years, and not just for me, but for her too. And I'm grateful that she's been understanding. Well, at least supportive. Maybe not understanding, but supportive.
Yeah, I think most people who are not struggling with stuck anxiety don't really understand what it's about, but absolutely we need supportive people in our corner for sure.
Definitely.
Hey, tell me, it sounds like it was like a slow and gradual growth of the anxiety. It wasn't just like one day I woke up and I was just riddled with anxiety to the point where I couldn't move. It just sort of slowly crept up on you. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, it really did. I dealt with the not being able to drive on the highway for quite a few years. That was the biggest problem is I couldn't drive on the highway. And it was big trips usually. Before that, it was only certain places. So I couldn't drive on the interstate to certain locations within Oklahoma City area. And so I would avoid that. And it became a game of avoidance. And then it got to where, well, now it's bothering me going other places on the highway. And so it just progressed and progressed. And as you start avoiding more things, more travel, you start limiting your abilities to do it. And so it got to where, I couldn't take alternate routes anymore, and I couldn't drive out of my normal circle of space. So it was very gradual.
Yeah. And a lot of people talk about driving anxiety, and I always say it's not actually that you're afraid of being in a car or driving a vehicle, right? So what was it that was really going on for you? What is the real fear there?
I don't know if it was an out of control feeling or the speed and motion itself happening around me. There were several things, and I tackled those different thought processes for years. I bought the crazy motion glasses that have the water under the bottom. Thought maybe my equilibrium was off. I've tried hypnotherapy at one time, and
Okay.
it worked for a little bit, but it always came back, and usually it came back worse. I mean, I hate to say it, but it really did.
True. But I think it is interesting because a lot of people don't understand why. Like you're saying, I just don't get why I was so anxious in a vehicle. And maybe it is the motion, maybe it is just your nervous system picking up sort of sensations and things that are going on around you that then triggers a sense of not being safe. And as that kind of grows, and then you have that anxiety and it feels worse, most people land up feeling a bit anxious that they're going to become anxious in those states,
Right.
and then it gets worse. You also said that it kind of fed into other areas of your life where you then got anxious about being in meetings and doing other things. Do you think it was a little bit of worry about what would happen if you became really anxious?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think that the fear of having another panic attack, having it once or twice is bad enough, but when you go around through life thinking it could happen at any time, embarrassment, that's sitting in meetings and thinking, oh, wow, I'm really feeling anxious. Are people watching me? Can they see the sweat on my brow? Obviously, if I'm sweating profusely, they're going to notice this. And so you start worrying about those things and it just escalates. And then it's, well, I've had enough of this meeting. I need to go to the bathroom or I need to do something else.
To
And
escape.
to escape. That was it.
Okay.
Just to look for a way to get out.
What other things did you give a go? This is 19 years. That's quite a long time to struggle with
It is a
something.
long
So you
time.
must have given a solid go at trying to fix it. What were all the things that you tried?
So I have tried different types of medication. That was one of the first things that I did is I went to my family doctor. Well, I went down several roads. I tried Cymbalta at one point, and I've tried Effexor at one point, and I tried Lexapro at one point. And all of those the side effects just weren't worth it to me. They made me feel apathetic to everything. I didn't have any opinion on anything. I just didn't feel like me. And it's strange because I'm very opinionated. I mean, you can ask me and I'll tell you. But it just floating through life, just not feeling like anything mattered. And this was over a several year period. I mean, obviously we were changing medications every few years to try something different. We finally got to a point to where I asked the doctor, well, can I do something short term? Is there something that I can take that will not have the long-term effects? And so he put me on a daily dose of Xanax. It was a small dose. And the only reason I even asked about Xanax is because I had gone on a few flights and he'd given me a dose of Xanax for that. And I thought, wow, this works. I don't care what's going on the flight. Maybe this is something I should do at a smaller dose. And so that was our plan of attack. And it mostly worked most of the time. I would get to the point where I could do the daily routine. It seemed to be okay. He'd already acknowledged that I might need a second dose at some point during the day. And so that was kind of my free pass to go, you know what, we're going to go out to dinner tonight at a restaurant. I better take one just to make sure. But let me get it in my system before we go because I don't want to have a panic attack on the way. And so it became a crutch. I was on it all the time. And it wasn't until our family doctor retired recently that I went to a new doctor and he questioned me and said, why are you on this every day? And I got defensive. I was at the point, I'm like, I don't like this guy. I think I'm going to change doctors again. I don't like him. His attitude he's way too forward. And the more I thought about it, I thought, well, I mean, why am I on this every day? It doesn't make me feel tons better. It makes me float along. And I'd been on your program for the 6 or 8 months at that point. And I thought, maybe there's some hope to get away from this. So that's kind of where I am now. I'm still weaning myself off of it. Yeah, I've been working on it for about a month and a half and making progress.
Oh, wow. It's such a big thing. Because how long had you been taking the benzos for? Was it just permanently for 19 years or where are we at?
Well, so the Xanax specifically has probably been about 5 years, 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah. It was a low dose. It was a 0.25 milligrams. I could take it up to twice a day if necessary. It just kind of masked the symptoms.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, if there is an effective treatment, and I'm putting that in inverted commas because it isn't actually a treatment more than a painkiller, but if the most effective tablet that one can take is a benzodiazepine, let's face it, for anxiety, it is the only one that is actually going to take the edge off the fear. Unfortunately, it is 100% addictive. It isn't really treating what is actually going on underneath the surface, right? It is really just taking the symptomatic feeling of anxiety away. So if you want to get on a flight, that Xanax is going to get you there. You will not believe the millions of people that are prescribed benzodiazepine as a permanent treatment option. So tell us a little bit now, since we've done the program together, we've worked together a little bit. What has changed for you? What's different?
I'm learning to enjoy life again. One of the most crystal clear things was learning to not react, but to respond to anxiety.
Yeah.
And for me, that was always it. Is the minute I would get anxious, it was, oh my gosh, I got to stop. I got to change something. Something's got to happen right now. And now it's more of okay, I feel it coming on. What am I going to do? I'm going to step through and figure out what the problem is and move on from it. And is it hard? Sure, it's hard. Sometimes harder than others, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's easy. And that right there, that gave me hope. It was the first time that I realized it came. I had an answer for it before it happened, and off it went, and it was forgotten. And I was like, hey, that's never happened before. So it gave me hope. It's a different mindset for me. It has become a different mindset. I know we've talked about bridges and whatnot. I was driving back late in the evening recently and going over one of those bridges, and somebody sped up and got right on my tail as I was going over the bridge. And I looked up, had a moment of panic, and I changed lanes and let him on by, and it was done. And I was like, you know what? I don't know what I'd have done 6 months ago. Well, number one, I wouldn't have been going over the bridge, but number two, I might have had a freak out moment and had an accident, honestly.
Yeah.
So it was nice to be able to look at it and go, you know what? It worked. I knew what to do, and just kind of made that a decision, not a reaction.
Yeah. There's so much to say about this, eh? Like, I think one of the things, I harp on about in the program is it's one thing to just understand anxiety and to have all this information. And so many people talk about perspective shift that they get when they've worked with me and the information that I share. Like, no one explains it that way, they say. But unless people actually shift into experiencing it, trying it on, giving it a go, seeing it in action, those shifts don't happen. And that was one thing that I watched you do so beautifully. And I know you've told the story to me probably at least 3 times, but I want you to tell it again because I just want our listeners to hear how you did it when you went over that bridge the very first time, because I know that you were terrified of doing it.
So I've been talking about it. I've been planning it. We'd reached the portion of the training where we were talking about setting micro goals. And one of those goals for me was to get over the bridge. We have a bridge in our town that goes over the interstate. It would save me a lot of time of not having to drive around underpasses to get onto the other side of the interstate. I was in the car with my daughter. She said, "Hey, Dad, you want to just go for a drive? Let's go for a drive and see how you're doing." And so we took a little drive. This is my adult daughter. And she said, "Well, Dad, let's go over the bridge." And I said, I just don't know. And she said, "Well, I'll hold your hand and we'll scream like it's a roller coaster."
Love it.
We drove over the bridge together and we held hands and we screamed and got to the other side and we just laughed. We laughed our heads off. It was hilarious. And then she said, "Okay, well, let's do it again." And so we drove back the other way. And so she reminded me that how I taught her how to ride a roller coaster 20 years ago. It kind of opened it back up for me. And since then, she's gone on drives with me a few more times. Both my daughters have, actually. And they're like, "I mean, you're doing great, Dad. You're doing great. Do you need to scream?" I'm like, "No, I'm good. I'm good today."
So, Robert, are you just driving over bridges now and just driving normally? Is that how it is for you?
I'm doing better. Every day's a little bit better. Every day is I try to pick up a few more things, do a few more driving areas. So part of my job, we cover several miles of territory in our school district. I've got 36 schools around the district. And so they're scattered all over this area. And so part of my job is as the IT manager is I need to go out and visit more of these schools more often. So that has been a goal of mine for a long time, to go visit these schools, and some of them are a little ways away. Now I've started making trips to these schools, and okay, I'm going to go try a different one. Okay, I'm going to go try a new one, just so that I can get out of my normal routine of driving every day and go somewhere different and open my horizons a little bit wider.
I guess what I'm hearing you say is that you're seeing possibility and you're not having
Absolutely.
I can't. You're going, "Oh, maybe I could." Is that what's
Right.
happening?
That's exactly what's happening. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. Am I getting better? Yes. Every day. Every day I'm getting a little bit better, and I'm not afraid to try it. Still in the back of my mind, it's still that little possibility of panic is still back there. But then I have to have that plan ready to go. It's like, well, what happens if I have a moment of, I can always pull over for a minute. Nobody cares if you pull into the park for a few minutes, and I don't have to care. That's the other thing. I've always had this feeling that everybody in the cars around you are watching you, and if you're going to act ridiculous, they're going to notice, and they're going to call the police on you. I think that's always been in the back of my head, because you're acting insane. And the truth is, nobody cares. Nobody really cares.
No one's
what
even
you're doing.
looking inside your car.
Nobody. In this day and age, we're lucky if they're looking not at their phone, they're looking at the roads.
Yeah. And does it help also knowing, because you've had the experience of the anxiety just subsiding when you respond to it in the right way? So is there also more of a confidence that goes, well, if I panic, I'll pull over and I know how to do this? I'm not afraid of what the panic is going to do to me. Does that happen?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm in a much better situation for that. I know up front that, you know what, if I need a little escape, I can. So one of the things that I've been working on most recently, and we've talked about it, is learning to just sit with the anxiety more.
Mm.
So I'm now purposely trying to go to more traffic lights and things like that where I actually have to sit for a few minutes. I have a little one of the little spinner things that if I get a little wound up, I can spin the little spinner thing, fidgeting toy or whatever. That is one of those things that is a tough reminder sometimes. It's like you're not going to be completely free of it, but you have to recognize it for what it is. And just being able to spot that it's nothing's wrong. It's just a reminder for you to look and pay attention to what's going on. And
Yes.
reminding yourself of that is it's tough sometimes,
Yeah.
but I'm learning.
When you think back to when things felt really stuck for you, I mean, a lot of what you're describing now, kind of sitting with the anxiety, being putting yourself in traffic, trying to go out to more places as you're tapering off your benzos as well, you're consistently exposing yourself to the potential of having anxiety or panic attacks. So many people are going to say, oh, so Robert is doing exposures. Now, I am not a fan of exposures when we don't have the right foundation. So I'm going to feel you out on this one because I don't know how it is for you. Do you reckon that you would have been able to do these exposures back before we met? Or has something shifted for you that's made that possible? And what is that thing that people need? Yeah.
So yes, there was no way. I, I actually, when I would research anxiety relief and panic attack relief and all that, that was always the exposure therapy. You need to do this. It made me angry because I'm like,
Yes.
no, there's got to be a better way. And I would just avoid that. I'm like, whatever, you're an idiot. There's got to be a better way. And after learning more about myself and my own schema and where I've come from and how things have developed for me over the years, I've learned that you know what, I'm the only one holding me back. I
Yeah.
If I can give myself a little bit of grace and a little bit of empathy, then maybe I can try a little bit of this. I'll dip a toe in and find out. And then,
Yeah.
okay, that wasn't so bad. Maybe we'll put both feet in. But you're absolutely right. There was no way. So I'm like, there's got to be a magic bullet or a pill or something to fix this. And I just haven't found the right one yet. It's scary to look at your life and go, I'm stuck with this. What do I do? You feel like how many hours are being wasted looking back and counting it? I've got to make up for some time.
Yeah. A lot of people that I work with actually go through a bit of a grief process once they come out the other end because they're just looking back at, as you say, all those years that they feel they've lost to anxiety. And when they've done the work, right, and they're at that space where now, as you're seeing how possible it is to actually do some of the hard stuff, they're kind of sitting back going, oh, why did I not do this sooner? Like, why did it take so long to figure this out? But at the
Right.
same time, as we're talking about those exposures, effectively what we're asking people to do is to put themselves in the very situations that their nervous system 100% believes is going to kill them. And no one is going to do that, right? Like if I said to you, you have to just jump off this 20-story building, just do that and you'll be fine. There's no ways you're going to do that, right? And that's
Right.
effectively what we're saying with exposure. Just drive over that bridge, you'll be fine. But your nervous system is saying, hell no, that is death. Certain death awaits me. So that is
Right.
why we have to do all that work beforehand to kind of shift all that understanding about where anxiety is coming from, what's it doing in your body, and everything else that shifts that enables you to finally get to that space that goes, oh, I can respond to this differently and it's not going to kill me. But we have to have a belief there. Otherwise, we can never do it, right? Never
Yeah,
ever.
yeah, that's exactly right. For me, in my situation, I ride with everybody else. We drive over the bridge. It happens every day for them. That was the reality check for me is why would it be any different for me?
Was there a turning point for you, Robert? Was there one specific thing that kind of locked in place that you suddenly realized, oh, this is it? Or was it slow and gradual?
It really was slow and gradual for me. I didn't want another one of those situations like taking different medications where it's like, oh, I feel great. I feel great. And then it's gone. I was a little bit apprehensive because I really didn't want to go down that rabbit hole again of feeling like, oh, this is the miracle cure. And then
Yeah.
2 weeks later, I'm back in the same place I was. This time I was very cautious about it. It all sounded really good, and I was learning, but putting it into action was a little harder to get going. It was nice to have built some tools to be able to talk about it and learn about it and see how to get past it. And honestly, if anybody is interested and not sure about the program, I was not sure about group therapy. I was not sure about that, as most people probably aren't. I thought, well, nobody's ever going to understand me. Mine is a weird case, and there's not that many people that even talk about this stuff. They weren't the same kind of issues or same kind of problems, but they understood and they could empathize and they could see where, hey, I have anxiety in another way and it seems debilitating, but it's different from yours. it's helpful to see that you're not the only one on this boat. It definitely turned some things around for me.
It's those belief shifts that just are the biggest piece of the work that most people don't realize. Most people want to have the coping tools and the things that are going to make the anxiety symptoms go away. And, how do I take a breath so that I don't feel such a tight chest? But what really needs to shift is what we're believing about ourselves in those moments. And that's that we can't do that without actual experience to shift it.
It was good to have that. It's good to have those tools in your back pocket so that if you can't think of anything else, you can think of, well, there was that one breathing technique or that one tapping technique or that one, tickle the roof of your mouth technique or whatever it is, to have that available and ready, because that's the only thing you can think of
course,
to get you past it. So had I tried exposure therapy without having some of those other tools available, nah, it wouldn't have worked out.
Tell us a little bit more about your experience tapering the benzos and what you've come to discover about yourself.
I have learned that I was much more addicted to this than I thought I was. I should have known by the moment I got so animated with the doctor, mind his own business, but it was very eye-opening. And the more I thought about it, I thought, well, what's it going to hurt to cut it down? What if I could cut it in half? And so I started tapering it down. I tried the half for a day, and that was wrong. I shouldn't have done it that way. I needed to slow down. But that next day I woke up, they call it the benzo flu. I woke up and every bone and every muscle in my body ached, and I just felt horrible. And so I thought, wow, what have I got? That's when I backed up and went, okay, what's the proper way to get off of this medication? So that's when I found out that if I go down 25% of the time over the course of a couple of weeks and then switch it from there, I would reduce the symptoms and find a little more transition between. One of the things that I discovered along the way. So in the United States, maybe I don't know if it's just us, but they have addicts that have been on Xanax for long periods of time are sometimes referred to as tweakers because they have jerky movements all the time. And I have been suffering with these jerky movements for several years, but not to the extreme that I would think anything of it. I'm not a tweaker. That's not me. But when I started cutting my medication down, I noticed I wasn't jerking around anymore. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I was an addict.
I was tweaking.
I pointed that out to my wife, my daughter, and they're like, huh, yeah, you have stopped that, haven't you?
Yeah. And sometimes people also notice that some of the anxiety symptoms that they experienced are actually withdrawal symptoms from the medication as it kind of leaves your body.
Yes, that did happen. We were talking about how late in the afternoons I would have to have another dose before we'd go out or go to restaurants or whatever. I came to the conclusion after like the third week that, okay, maybe that feeling of needing it in the afternoon was withdrawals, because now that I've cut back some, I don't need it in the afternoon. Today was the day that I shifted down to a quarter of a dose. And I'll be honest, I was a little bit wound up today. I also attribute some of that to the weather. Allergens are really high right now, so I've got a little added pressure in the ear. But that's the thing, is you have to examine these things and realize what it's really all about. Are these symptoms of anxiety? Are these symptoms of something environmental? Are they something to do with all of the added stress from work? Why are you having these anxiety issues? And I've rediscovered in myself that I like to have a lot of things going. I've got a large family, lots of grandkids. On top of that, I work full time, and I run a business on the side too. And sometimes all of those things pile on at once, and it can be a little stressful. But I found that I enjoy it now. I can prioritize things a little bit better, and they don't feel as overwhelming as they used to. But I know how to handle it, and I know how to prioritize things, and I know how to get over the stress and move forward without having panic attacks. So as far as learning goes, I have learned a ton. I'm learning more about myself.
I think it's important to put disclaimers on when we're talking about medications, that it is really important that people do this with help with a doctor. And that I always say, the slower you taper, the better for you. There really is no rush coming off the medications. Right. But absolutely, as you can see, there is so much value in understanding that sometimes some of the stuff we're experiencing is withdrawal, and we don't have to make it mean more than it does. Sometimes it is just withdrawal, but people will see that and then they'll think, oh my gosh, my anxiety is coming back. And then we kind of get stuck in that whole fear state of, am I going to get stuck again? And am I going to be able to drive? And what if my life gets ruined? And all of those thoughts are just going to create more anxiety in that space. So this is why it is really important to do it when we have already changed our relationship with anxiety, so that we know how to respond to those sensations when they're coming up, and just to be compassionate and gentle with ourselves. And also to realize, I guess, as you're saying, you had a bit of an edgy day today. we're going to have those days. And if we're coming from it from a space that goes, well, it is absolutely acceptable to have days that don't feel good, we don't have to make them mean more than they do. You know, the other day, my boy came to me and he had this weird like cramp thing happening in his chest. Now, he is neurodivergent, I'll say this, and he is also edging towards the health anxiety side. So I'm very mindful of how I respond to his ailments. But I thought about it the other day because most of the time when our kids come with an ache or a pain and we can't really see what's going on, and you can see that they're not crying in a heap of pain, we'll often say to them, okay, well, see how you go, have a drink of water, have a rest, and if it's still sore tomorrow, we'll deal with it. Now, if we could address our own anxiety symptoms or the withdrawal symptoms, or like you said, like you had this stuff going on today, if we don't jump onto that immediately and then make it mean something like, oh, I've got anxiety, oh, I'm going to have a panic attack. If we just sat back and was like, okay, this is happening, I'm going to have a drink of water, I'm going to have a rest, and I'll see how I feel tomorrow. Imagine how many of those sort of crazy panic cycles we would just avoid because we didn't make it mean something more than it does. Yeah, so interesting.
That's absolutely correct.
Exactly right. And we trust our children's ability to sit with that discomfort. In fact, we even expect that they will for the whole night to let us know how they feel tomorrow. And yet we won't expect ourselves to do the same.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is one of those big journeys that we have to take. Now, to anyone who's listening, what would you want them to know?
So if you've been struggling with anxiety or panic attacks, and it doesn't matter, everybody has their own journey and their own adventure down this road. I would highly recommend that you give the Unstuck a try. It has worked for me. The work and the help from Dee is phenomenal, but you've got to be willing to put in the time. Research about yourself a little bit and be willing to put forth some action, because it's not about sitting complacent. It's not about a magic pill cure. It's about putting in some work and getting yourself going in the right direction again. Man, I'm sold. I am so glad that I found Dee, honestly. And I ran across her on Instagram like everybody else does. Like, all of the other claims are out there. They seem intriguing. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to listen to something she has to say and see how it resonates. And when I did, I was like, you know what? She makes sense. I think we're going to give it a go. And boy, am I glad I did. I really am. And I think that there's hope for anybody.
There is.
Don't hold yourself back any longer. I wasted 19 years. Don't waste that kind of time. Just get after it.
Yeah. Robert, you are such a good example of what healing looks like. So I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate you being here and sharing your story for everyone to listen to, mainly because I think people need to see what's possible and that it actually does work, even when somebody has been stuck for 19 years, because that is one of the things that I hear most of the time. I've been stuck for so long. It's been my whole life. I've tried everything. What makes this different? But essentially, healing is different for everybody. The journey is different for everyone, as as we've seen in the program as well. But ultimately, it comes down to seeing the change in your life. And you've just been such a brilliant example of that. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm glad you've been here for me. So I appreciate you.
Thank you. So what Robert just described, that shift from fighting anxiety to finally understanding it, that's what healing and work is really about. It's not about managing the symptoms better. It's not about white knuckling through your day or trying to find a different route to work. It is really a genuinely different relationship with your anxiety and with what your body is doing. So if this conversation has resonated with you and you're wondering where to start, the first step is just to understand how you are responding to your own anxiety. And I have a free quiz for you. It just takes a couple of minutes to complete. It's linked in the show notes and down below, and that is the best place to begin. So thank you very much for joining me for the Ease Anxiety podcast. I'll see you in the next episode.